felt like there were two people. And my friends used to joke that I was either, this Mike, who was party animal, loved the material world, very charismatic, would go off and run the country, or the biggest business in the country, and Michael would end up in Nimbin, sort of meditating on a mountain. So there were two people, and I didn't let anybody in work notice the other one at all. That would have been very dangerous. And in fact, I hid that other person for a very long time for fear that it would actually, the body would reject the organ being me. Then of course I had cancer when I was in my early 30s. And at that point I had a lot of intellectual understanding of some of these ideas of a broader connectedness of life and the new physics and the new biology, and I'd read a lot of stuff and had some own personal experiences of meditation. But suddenly I was faced with a year to live, and I had no choice but to, it was the night before the exam, so I had no choice but to actually get in and study. And so I went down and visited a fellow Ian Gawler in Melbourne, who works with cancer patients, and he did a one-week course which had a lot of stuff around meditation, around mind-body interconnections, around the idea of shifting your own internal realities and what you think is what you are, etc. And that he did it in such a way that it was was experiential and transformational, and I had a transformational experience. And I went from basically intellectually knowing that this was possible to actually knowing I could do it myself. I then went through, and there's a whole story of things I then experimented with his help, but I got to the point where I knew that I could create white cells in my body and heal my body. And within literally 6 weeks of that, my body was completely healed of the cancer, having been completely riddled with it, with 12 months to live. So that was a profound experience. I woke up one morning and had a gallium scan, and they said, there's nothing, it's gone, we can't find a thing, can't find anything. Whereas 6 weeks before I was riddled, and that was fantastic, and also quite challenging, because then I said, people would then say to me, what did you do? Can I send my friend who's got cancer, etc.? And I'd think, well, it worked in practice, but does it work in theory? What happened? So the what happened part of it led me on a journey to try and understand at a deeper level what I'd experienced, and others who tell similar stories had experienced. And I then went off and did all sorts of things with various people and read all sorts of things, travelled around the world. And I got to a point where I started to realise that, I learned a lot about the unconscious and Jungian sort of thinking, and learned a lot about different ways of moving the unconscious, how it works, and started practicing them on myself very successfully. And then started with some of my friends. I had a group of friends who we had a little men's group that we'd started up. When I got sick with cancer, we had a lot of conversations that were quite deep, and conversations young men don't normally have. And of course, when I got better, we didn't want to go back again, but we didn't know how to go forward. So we set up a little group of us, and we used to meet every 3 months for a weekend and just talk. And that led to what you'd think of as now as a whole lot of emotional intelligence learning, but it was quite powerful for all of us. And we started, as a group, playing with some of these things that I'd been learning about to great effect in their lives. And a number of them said to me, you should be thinking about this with your clients, and I'd been thinking about it. And what is this? Well, it's really helping people to realise their own personal potential. It's about personal mastery in an organisational context. It's about emotional intelligence. It's about what we're now calling spiritual intelligence, which is about meaning and connectedness. And I had a theory, and I guess it goes right back to my childhood, where I saw all the pain that fear creates, that you could actually be more successful in an organisation. And I'd been in lots of organisations in my time in McKinsey, seen lots of companies all over the world. It was a great privilege of McKinsey at a young age. You get to sit with CEOs. I'd been with the CEOs of the biggest oil companies in the US. During crises they were having, biggest companies in Europe. I'd had all that at that point. And I'd watched them, and I'd seen them, and I'd felt them, and I could feel the different cultures. I could feel the fear. I could feel we don't call it love in business, but it's communication, it's trust, it's openness, and energy, and vibrancy, and risk-taking, and creativity, which are all the sort of love aspects of it. And I could feel the constriction that occurred in people, and I could also feel that there was some new end culture that needed to be created in business, which would actually even be more successful than the current paradigm. And that end culture has since become very clear to me since I've been doing this work, because I've now had the chance to do it in quite a number of companies. The end culture that's required for business today on the planet to be most successful, on one side is more accountable, demanding, clear. You know, it's got a hard edge around, this is what we expect of each other, this is what is required of me, and this is success, right? And you know, with stretch targets in that, and you know, there's a whole tightness around what we're doing here together, and what we expect of each other. And there's a whole way we do that, which is with an openness and an honesty, an emotional honesty, and connecting to meaning, because there's only a lot of energy when there's a lot of meaning. You know, people do incredible things if it's meaningful. They'll jump off buildings, they'll fly planes in the buildings, and, you know, we may not agree with them, but it's meaning that makes people do that. And where you see it really energized, you know, people at work, it's because it's meaningful. We don't talk about this much, but that's actually the piece. And if you say to someone, tell me about your best experiences at work, you know, tell me about it. And then you say, you know, they'll go back and think of one, and then you'll say, well, tell me what was different about that. And they'll always talk about, oh, the thing we did was really meaningful, effectively, big, challenging, and made a difference. And there was a certain way we worked with each other. Right? There was openness, trust, honesty, you know, a bunch of emotional intelligence factors. So high meaning and high emotional intelligence. So what we call meaning is, you know, SQ, spiritual intelligence. Those two factors, if you can tie those together as an environment with this demandingness, you have the organizational culture of the 21st century. Right?